105.9 Academy FM Folkestone.
Academy Reports, bringing news in depth to your home. I'm Sarah Carre and I present Academy Reports. Every week we speak to the people that matter, keep you up to date and uncover the truth behind the stories that matter to Shepway. So if you want to hear the stories behind the local headlines, tune in to Academy Reports with me, Sarah Carre, every Friday between 3 and 4. We'll catch up on Saturday mornings between 9 and 10, here on 105.9 Academy FM. I'm Sarah Carre and this is Academy Reports, where every week we look at the issues that matter to the people of Shepway. On this week's programme, we look at Veolia, a company that provides waste management services to our area, but has come under question for its involvement in a business venture in the Middle East. There have been tensions between the Israeli nation and surrounding Arab states for many years. One of the current debates centres around some illegal settlements that have been built by Jewish settlers on occupied Palestinian territory. The Jerusalem Light Railway links an illegal Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank with mainland Israel, a railway operated by Veolia that in 2010 the Human Rights Council declared to be in clear breach of international law. Veolia is a company that is also contracted to provide services to Shepway District Council, such as refuse collection. In this piece, we are not debating the issue of the settlements themselves. We are asking why Shepway Council has a major contract with a company that operates a tramway that the United Nations Human Rights Council says is, I quote, in clear violation of international law. Firstly, to find out about the tramway and the issues surrounding it, I spoke to Penny Newell from the Palestine Support Group, who has recently visited Palestine. Here she explains Veolia's involvement in the tramway.
Veolia is a company that has a contract to run a train line for illegal settlers to be taken from one part of Israel to another. And Palestinians aren't allowed on that train. And Palestinians have requested that people boycott and disinvest in companies that do this kind of thing.
The tramway that we're talking about, is that going over land that's occupied by Israel? Has the UN declared that land actually Palestinian?
Yes.
How long ago was it that the tramway was actually built?
It's recently been finished. I was in Palestine 2 weeks ago, and I can now see people travelling on it. But when I went a year ago, it hadn't quite been finished.
So what they've actually done is they've built a tramway to link the illegal settlements to Israel.
Yes, to Jerusalem, yes, you're quite right. What the Palestinians want as part of their what they call boycott and disinvestment is to encourage other companies not to take the same route as Veolia in taking these large contracts. The United Nations Human Rights Council expressed its grave concern, and so their involvement in those projects is in contravention of United Nations stated demands that the Israeli settlement activities and occupations should not be supported. So they've been complicit in supporting them.
Shepway District Council signed a contract alongside Dover District Council for their waste collection and recycling in January 2011 with Veolia, a contract that lasts 10 years. I asked Shepway Council's deputy leader, the Conservative Rory Love, if they were aware of Veolia's international activities when they entered into the contract with the French company.
Well, I'm certainly aware that we have contracted with a worldwide company that carry out a number of services all around the world, including the transport services that you describe in Israel and or Palestine.
Is the council aware of the fact they break UN law?
The council hasn't taken any legal advice on exactly what the position is there. What we're aware of is that we've contracted with a subsidiary company in the UK to collect our recycling and waste and to clean our streets. And what we are aware of is that company, that contract, is saving the taxpayers of Shepway some £750,000 a year on year, for the services that they provide, compared with what we were doing previously.
But activities that Veolia have undertaken, they break UN law. Is there an ethical question here that the council should be considering the conduct of services they're using and companies that they're using internationally?
I'm, as a cabinet member of Shepway District Council, I'm not here to take a position on global politics. I'm aware, let me make it very clear that I'm very much aware of some of the issues relating to Israel and the occupied areas of Palestine. And I have some sympathy with those who want to highlight the concerns that they have. But I'm not here as a global politician looking to the taxpayers of Shepway pay some sort of price for an activity which is undertaken quite legitimately by a partnership of which a subsidiary of Veolia plays a part.
But it's all under the same umbrella. So whether it's a subsidiary or not, it is still Veolia as a company that are being contracted to do the work out there.
Well, as I understand it, Veolia have about a 5%, Veolia Transport Israel have about a 5% stake in the City Pass partnership. Veolia Transport Israel is a subsidiary of a wider Veolia Transport subsidiary, which in turn is a subsidiary of the French parent company of the company that we've contracted with. Now, there is a degree of separation, I think, there. It is for those who are concerned about the contracts that other branches of Veolia are carrying out. It is for those people to take up those very specific points. My focus is entirely on the service that the company is providing for us. We're very pleased that we've contracted with somebody who's providing a £750,000 saving for the taxpayers of Shepway.
Regardless of whether they breach international law?
Well, that's a matter for determination. I haven't seen any judgment on that. And,
well, they break UN law. That is a fact.
Well, as I say, I haven't seen any judgment on that. That's a matter for determination in another place, not in the chamber of Shepway District Council.
Canterbury City Council were at one stage considering joining the contract that is held with Shepway and Dover district councils. Leader of the Liberal Democrats of Canterbury, Alex Perkins, believed that there is more than finances and savings to be considered when entering into a contract.
I hope that the people of Canterbury will understand that there is more than just the value of a penny to think about when it comes to, despicable acts being carried out in faraway lands in the name of a company that are tendering for us here in Canterbury. Would I mind paying a couple of pence more a week to have my rubbish removed by somebody who wasn't in breach of a UN resolution? Well, it wouldn't bother me, but I'm sure that there are those, like Rory, who believe that money is everything.
Palestinian rights protesters lobbied Canterbury City Council's executive as it discussed a proposal to join Shepway and Dover District Council's contract. Canterbury have now decided to go to tender and consider other companies for their waste management contract. Councillor Perkins explains why.
The decision to go to a tendering basis was not done due to any moral imperative. Simply, we are in a position where the City Council is currently contracted to Serco, and Serco quite rightly asserted their right to be included in any negotiation for the future of the contract. And I think that's right and proper. I was greatly surprised that a company like Veolia were even going to be considered as the preferred contractor, i.e. the only people we would negotiate with. Now the council will be talking not just to Serco and Veolia, but to any organisation, any company that is able to put together a tender to do the work that local people need. Once we have that information in front of us, a decision will be made. Rory, of course, would make the decision purely based on finances.
Do you think the protests that have surrounded Veolia in Canterbury will have any impact on the council's decision?
There are certainly many councillors who have been quite moved and been informed, shall we say. There are others who, like Rory, can only see the bottom line.
Councillor Love says he believes there is a large degree of separation between the services Veolia are providing in Shepway and their activities in the Middle East.
It is a subsidiary of one of their other companies. That, in turn, is a subsidiary of the holding company. There are a number of degrees of separation. The people we've contracted with have not been in breach of any of the regulations which would enable us to exclude them. I know there is a dispute over the extensions from West Jerusalem into East Jerusalem. That is a matter for debate elsewhere. It is not a matter for Shepway District Council to say, well, because we think that there may be a legal dispute over whether that particular transport infrastructure is aiding and abetting the illegal occupation of parts of East Jerusalem. That's not something that Shepway District Council would normally get involved with, and nor would we wish to, and nor would it be an appropriate use of taxpayers' money to do so. Now, let me make it quite clear. I do understand the case that people are making about the new linkages being put in between West and East Jerusalem.
Rory Love went on to imply that any transport link created is actually beneficial in the future, despite the humanitarian concerns that have been raised in the present.
I think there is actually some debate to be had about whether providing new transport infrastructure is more enduring than any particular government in any of the individual countries, the Israeli government or the current Palestinian.
But we're talking about a legal tramway that's linking illegal settlers to occupy territory.
Yeah, and once you've invested in transport infrastructure, whatever the current rules are, whoever currently is allowed on a particular service or not, that is likely to change in the years and ahead. Transport infrastructure, I think, is far more enduring than the current rules of any particular government. But look, again, that is not something that the people of Shepway, that the people who elect me, are telling me that they want to debate in the chamber of Shepway District Council.
But is that because they don't actually know this is what's happening? So are we assuming, therefore, that actually the people of Shepway and Dover know about these activities and they've made a decision that they don't care either way? If they all came to you and said, well, actually, now we know, would you end a contract prematurely?
No, we wouldn't end the contract prematurely, no. And I'm sure that Veolia's answer would be that they're also trying to sell their stake in the tramway.
But they do have to, as part of that sale, still operate it and still maintain the tramway. So they are still involved.
I'm not going to get involved with the contractual arrangements of, as I say, a subsidiary of a subsidiary of a subsidiary. What I'm concerned about, and my absolute focus, is on providing a good service for the public in Shepway, and with a company which hasn't broken any law in the UK, a company which is highly regarded as one of the leading recycling and waste operators in the UK, which has also saved the taxpayers £750,000 a year in Shepway.
Palestine support groups internationally have claimed that Veolia are guilty of aiding and abetting what they call ongoing war crimes. I asked Councillor Love if aiding and abetting war crimes is classed as gross misconduct. Would that then be considered as grounds for a council to terminate a contract with a supplier?
Those words are words that I've seen used by the protesters. They may have very good reasons for using those words, but they're not words that I recognise.
You yourself or you as the council?
They're not words that I or that my portfolio at the Shepway District Council recognise.
I know with councils, they have a right to exclude certain companies in 2006 regulations under gross misconduct. So if breaking international law and human rights laws doesn't come under gross misconduct, what actually does?
Well, I haven't seen any evidence that Veolia Environmental Services, with whom we've contracted, have in any way breached any of the regulations which would enable us to exclude them. And we certainly would have no intention of excluding the UK Environmental Services Company from our contracts. Now, if there is a subsidiary of Veolia elsewhere where there's a dispute, and that's all I can say, there is a dispute.
Well, it's not necessarily a dispute when they do break law. It's not something that people think they may, and it's yet to be clarified. They do break human law.
And that's a question to put to Veolia. Veolia Transport Israel, I would suggest, is the appropriate subsidiary to put that to, rather than Veolia Environmental Services in the UK, who collect our recycling and waste.
We invited Veolia Environmental Services to comment, but they declined. Councillor Perkins from Canterbury City Council told us what he thought of Councillor Love's opinions.
Deputy Leader Rory Love has said that he's aware that they have contracted with a worldwide company, but also says we have to be very careful about any investigations into speculation, of which is so far removed from the company we are working with, and he's not there to take a position on global politics. Should, in his position as Deputy Leader of a council, should he not be considering global politics, or should he just be at a local level?
Well, I think local decisions should be made locally. Rory's position is quite clear. He doesn't think that one should use one's conscience in taking these decisions.
He's also said that he's not going to get involved with the contractual arrangements of a subsidiary of a subsidiary of a subsidiary that is too far removed from the company they are contracted with. What he's concerned with and what his absolute focus is on is providing a good service for the people of Shepway with a company that has not broken any law in the UK and a company that is highly regarded. Should you, as a council, not be considering the activities of somebody outside of the UK if they are breaking laws?
Well, that's the key question. Lawyers would tell us that we must only deal with the specific issues put in front of us, and that are the contract stipulations. I think if councillors have in the back of their minds that a wrong is being done on a great scale somewhere else in the world, not in a different name, but in the name of Veolia, and I have not been to Palestine, I've not seen for myself, but I trust the UN when they say that Veolia are involved in acts which are perpetuating a very serious human rights issue. I think we need to be clear that that is the sort of issue that anyone with a conscience will at least give some consideration to when looking into the way their local area is managed.
These are issues that are being discussed nationally. Do you think it's something that, as people are getting more and more aware of, councils are going to be taking more of a view with what they're contracted to?
Well, I've written to the Minister specifically asking that question. What are we allowed to do? Under the Localism Act, supposedly we're allowed to have a great deal more local determination. I think we've got to be careful to say that no one is suggesting there should be a ban on all Israeli goods. But, you know, if it's an illegal settlement, it doesn't matter if it's an Israeli illegal settlement or somebody else's illegal settlement. And if there is a company so openly and blatantly maintaining and supplying an illegal settlement, then you have to ask the question, is it right to work with that company? Human rights tend to swing on specific incidents. Canterbury City Council is not Rosa Parks, but Rosa Parks sat on a school bus one day, and because of the publicity generated by her act, things changed. Maybe it's time for us to make a stand and make the change. It's a moral imperative, and I hope it's something that people will understand when it comes to just putting their rubbish out. There are more important things than the cost of a dustbin sack.
Councillor Alex Perkins, ending this edition of Academy Reports. To give us your thoughts on this story and for any other issues you would like to hear covered on the programme, email news@academyfmfolkston.com.